Hello, and welcome to Recording Your Personal History. I'm going to start this by discussing why. So we're going to get into why a little bit. And actually, the Start with Why is actually a book, and it's actually a good book. I recommend that. So in terms of why should you record or not record your own personal history, or why should I? That's kind of the question we'll answer now. So in terms of consideration, there's gains, there's benefits, there's pains and costs that go along with that. And so we'll talk about these a little bit at a time. At first, what we'll start with is some of the gains. I'll put this over here. So basically the gains is you get to leave a record of your life. A few of my family did this. My granddad wrote his story, but all the other ancestors I have, I know less about them. I would have liked to have known them better. But through his story, I got to know him better. So that's nice there. My dad also published a personal history publicly to Amazon. Mine is personal. I've published mine, but I didn't put it out to Amazon. I only sent it to family and friends. So another thing is you can magnify your talents and gifts with a new skill. You'll learn about how to be an author, how to do some of this stuff that we'll describe in creating your personal history. Also, I think there's a little bit of clarifying your thinking about your life. And writing your history can provide you with an opportunity to evaluate your life to this point and help you clarify the direction you've been going and where you want to go. And writing about your past, even if it wasn't idyllic, can help you cope with feelings that you had in those situations and create an opportunity to find understanding and forgiveness, and basically write from, as somebody else, I think Tucker Max said, write from the scars, not from wounds. So learning about yourself is another reason for doing that. Another thing is you can prove you can do something hard. You end up being an author, even though it's only a personal history, you're going to write a book, and it's a substantial effort. Also, I think, you are unique on the earth. Your story is unique. I think by definition, this means you have something to offer. Sometimes people get told, well, what do I have to say? My life isn't that big of a deal. But again, you're the only one that's you. So your story definitely has an audience, and particularly your history, your future generations are going to want to know that. So it's really important, I think, to share that with them, like my granddad did with me. So plus you can show your path, your challenges, and how you overcame and solved problems in your life. I mean, we all have challenges and problems. So it helps your posterity see what you did to overcome challenges and problems. And the last thing I'll cover is that, your life matters. I mean, whether to your God or your family, your children, your grandchildren, great-grandchildren, people in your family care about your life. And although you may feel like your teen children don't, that's natural. I didn't care when my granddad gave me his book at the age of when I was 14, because I didn't really understand what it was. But when I was older, in my 30s, suddenly I realized what a treasure that was. But it took me having to mature. And so as they mature in their lives, they will appreciate your story, I think. And others get to learn from your life experiences as well. Okay, so I'm going to scroll up. This tool that I'm using is called iThoughts. It's an Apple product. It's just a mind map is all it is. Okay, so let's talk about the impact on others. I think you can make an impact on the people coming after you. Your family is your audience. So, not necessarily fame today. You're not trying to impress anybody. You're simply telling your story. If they have ears to hear, so to speak, then they can hear your story and learn from you. Our civilization has learned by advancing science, and each generation, quote, stands on the shoulders of giants for those who went before. And yet, how often do we do that with our families? Do we really offer what we've learned before for them to gain as they go forward in life? And sometimes I think we can do better at that. So they get the benefit, if we do this, of your successes and your learning and your mistakes, because mistakes are how we learn. And then also, I think they will gain if we pass down what we've learned. And so that's part of the impact that you're going to have on your posterity. When you look at, sometimes people think, well, I'm just a normal person. Yeah, you don't have to be a top historical figure or some superstar in fame for your family to appreciate what you did and struggled with. My granddad is unknown to the world, but I loved him. I still love him. And I mean, he's not here anymore. He's gone to the next life, but I learned from his experiences. I'm grateful that he took a year or more of his life. I think it was 10 years where he compiled our family history, but his personal portion of that may have been at least a year or two. And I'm grateful that he took the time to do that. and he recorded some of what he did and some of the photographs that he was, where he was. And as an example, during World War II, he was in Shanghai, China, and then me and my dad went on a trip to Shanghai, China, and we ended up in some of the same places, and we saw the same buildings in the background. So his story helped me see our history during that time a little differently. Sometimes in history class, you hear these dates and it's like, well, yeah, but when you've got somebody that it kind of like if you've got somebody on the team when you're watching a sporting event, then you get maybe more engaged in the event. And so to me, you don't have to be somebody famous for that to matter. Okay. Show how you solve problems in life. So maybe some of your future posterity or progeny won't have as good of a hand dealt to them as you had dealt to you, or maybe the reverse. And maybe they can learn from your persistence and hardship. Your choices in response to life challenges may be a map to others downstream and to help them navigate their own challenges. I think your story written in written words, and the reason I say recorded is you can either record audio or you can record it in text. However you decide to record it, if it's written, they can reread and ponder that and return to it. If it's audio, I guess they can listen to it again. That's where I got that particular quote. And also, I think sometimes you can have the proper blend of fact and feeling. And so, feelings, if you want to share what your spiritual journey was, you can do that in addition to maybe what you did for work, what you did with your family, what you felt like your accomplishments, how you struggled with challenges and problems, and provide deep spiritual insight into the meaning and purpose of our lives to your future. So again, when we talk about impact on others, that's part of it. Another is that you've got a lot of people that have contributed to the world by writing their personal histories, and you can go see other people's work in a local library that has a genealogy library portion of it, or you can go online to familysearch.org, and they have this enormous section of books that people have done exactly that. And you can, the ones that don't have copyrights, you can actually go and open those and see how other people have written their personal histories. And then another thing is how you've lived and learned is new to people that come after you. Some of them will see value in it, so record your personal history to those few. Others may not care, but you don't need to care about what critics are going to say. They're not your audience. Your audience is your future family. So don't give in to your own self-critic. We all have that little guy on your shoulder that's saying, oh, you can't do this, you can't do that. Ignore that. Just go forward. And then finally, I'd like to say, make a gift of your story to your ancestors, or excuse me, your progeny going forward. Your future generations can only learn so much from your DNA data. If there's nothing written about your life, they'll have the dates, they'll have from the tombstone, they'll see, born this date and died that date, but everything in the middle, they don't know unless you tell them. A book lasts beyond your death and continues to tell your story to anybody who chooses to open the pages and read it or listen to it if it's an audio recording. Your story will matter to somebody, and you alone get to decide whether or not you want to share it with them. So even if no one else listens or reads that story, tell it to that one person who may need it. If your story it may provide future blessings for a future family member. So another thing is try to leave your ego behind when you write it, and listen to promptings if you want to share certain things, or if you feel prompted to share certain things. Sometimes God works in mysterious ways with your family. I've gained a lot from seeing how my granddad adjusted when he left the military after World War II, and it helped me when I left the military, as an example. So many of my ancestors may have thought their story didn't matter because they didn't write them. Now, to be fair, a lot of them were farmers, and that's a lot of hard work. And maybe at the end of the day, they're just tired and passed out. They didn't have computers back then. It would have been a lot harder to write it by hand. My granddad used a typewriter and over and over with lots of whiteout and new pages. We have the tools today to make this much easier. So I want to know more about my ancestors, but they didn't write their histories. So for me, just seeing their signature on, for example, a World War II draft registration card tells me something about them, how big their curls were when they did how small their signature was. It's little things like that. That's all I have for some of my family. So, I like many of your current and future generations want to know where I came from. And so what if they had left their stories like my grandfather? I wish they had donated a year of their life to do that for all of us. And I've already mentioned the farming piece. And then what characteristics did they build in life that were passed down? I mean, genetically, we gain from all of the genetic contributions of all the people that were before us. But how did they overcome challenges? How did they find joy and happiness in their lives? Those are the kinds of things that you can make a gift of your story. This is a quote that I thought was pretty good, that knowledge of our ancestors shapes us and instills us with values and that give direction and meaning to our lives. Family stories, this was from Rachel Coleman. She said, family stories directly impact how we see ourselves because they give us an idea of where we came from and how we fit into our family. Think of each family story as a single thread and a tapestry of woven with beautiful, complex patterns, colors, and designs. And like that tapestry, we're a combination of the culture and traditions we inherited from our families. And then the last one I'll put on here is the guy that's in charge of StoryCorps. They do a lot of, sometimes on National Public Radio, they put their stories on there. And he said, hearing the stories of our families and learning the hardships they faced helps us develop understanding, compassion, and empathy for them. The power of authentic stories told from the heart to build bridges between people and bridges of understanding is infinite. So those things, again, we're going back to provide a gift of your story. So those are the gains. And I'll stop this video and we'll go forward with the next one. We'll get into the pains as the next installment about, is it hard? Well, yeah, it is. And I'll outline a little bit about what's involved in that. And then we'll get into, should you decide to do that? And then future videos will also cover the who, the when, the what, and the how. So we'll continue those things as well. And that's all I've got. Thanks for joining me.